A souk, this the second circle from the house is what you see here. So it's just a street, but definitely it has things that you need. The immediate needs for a household usually are, a lot of times are, bread, vegetables, and meat, and eggs, and a lot of things that actually they will find in a street which is not very far. So any kid can go to the market to get what their mother needs without actually trespassing to the fin du monde, or the end of the world. This is an old picture from 1920s of Main Street, Rabat. So, Pierre Bourdieu has done a lot of work in Kabylia and also visited Morocco and all of that. But this is what he thinks. A man has, has respect for himself, should let himself seen. I mean, this is, Argaz, that's a Berber word for, Berber phrase for, a man among men, something like that. So men have actually to be outside and leave the house and everything for women to actually maneuver. And then even if in bad weather, they have to find some shelter for themselves. That's why a lot of times my students in Morocco ask me, so all these men are sitting outside near the mosque, what are they doing? And they notice that, I mean, a lot of times. So I try to find an answer to, why are they sitting especially in those places? There are men who are retired, there are men who don't have work, there are men who just have finished their work and they're joining the crowd near the mosque and they're sitting. So I thought that men do anything that women don't do when women actually do everything. And what do they do? And they started thinking also, well, yeah, these are retired kind of warriors, but there's no war. There's no battle, there's nothing. So wars were in the south of Morocco. Warriors, to be a warrior was actually a job. You have a camel or a horse and then you move in the desert and you go to places and you actually guard the caravan route from Fes to Timbuktu and you get money out of that. And then it's a job. But this is a job that people retired from many centuries ago. So they inherited actually a lot of that aspect or that element of being retired has been inherited. So if you have a son, for example, or a daughter who works for the government or somewhere else, they a lot of times they provide money for the family, and people have a lot of satisfaction because there's God and there is the elder kid who provides money, and then these two are in charge and they don't need to worry about anything. That's why a lot of times what you see in a lot of Moroccan cafes is a lot of men outside. Sitting outside, there's no women here. I looked closely because I wanted to make sure that there is actually no women outside here. So it is also a gendered space, cafes. Inside the cafes, usually there are a lot of women. It also has to do with age. So what is being noticed is that if we go back to our circle and we think about how space is gendered, for many, many generations now, women have actually gone very, very far crossing those circles. And now men and women share the same space, despite of course, against sometimes the will of some traditional men. That's why what happens is, how do men resist to practicing the same space with women on Moroccan streets? A lot of times is through what we call in Morocco verbal harassment. They would talk to women on the street and say, hey, you're beautiful, or what are you doing here, or stuff like that. This is part of, I don't know if it's part of the culture. I don't know if it's, I'm sure that it's part of an urban culture where if there's a woman walking in the street, probably there's a young man or something following her and then trying to say some words to her. But there is a study that has been done in 97 by somebody in Casablanca, and then what they found out in a sample of 200 couples, probably 36% of them have met on the street. So there are two sides. Where do they meet? Where do men and women meet to actually talk, to decide that I'm not talking about other relationships, for example, that are not even talked about openly in Morocco. I mean, the gay, lesbian, and nobody talks about them. Just talking about the heterosexual relationships that do happen. A lot of relations start from the street, because it's forbidden in the school because the teacher might see you, forbidden in the house because I haven't met any woman in Morocco who has a boyfriend who can openly talk to, in traditional Morocco, talk to her family, especially the father. She can say that to her mother, but a lot of times the father, it's almost impossible to talk to the father about, well, I have a boyfriend, or invite him, or invite the girlfriend in the house. So that's like a forbidden space, as they call it, for that kind of interaction to happen. There is the more lawful spaces for those interactions are cafes, cultural centers sometimes, cultural events, parks. A lot of these areas is where actually a lot of these kind of interactions happen, but also inside some of the cafes is where a lot of people do meet as well. So souks are always crowded with people. This here on this photo on the right hand side, this is actually one of the other side of Main Street, Rabat, which is the Medina side of Mohammed V Street, and then this is an area where a lot of women come to sell things. And I have noticed a lot of that happening in the last, many years ago. Women would go there, and depending how covered they are, sometimes women would cover in wearing the hijab, and then this is another side of how do we understand actually going out. A lot of Berber women, as you will notice, don't put the veil on. And the mountains, it's just, it's not part of the culture. But when some of these women will move to the city, they start wearing the veil. But does that have to do with urbanism, or does it have to do with religion? But when we go from here, from Western countries, and we're looking at all these women wearing the veil, yeah, we call them traditional women. But what tradition is that? When it's more related, is it related to social mobility? I mean, becoming rich sometimes, or moving from a place to another, make you do certain things. So this is where space defines sometimes actions of a lot of women. So this is the restrictive side of space. This is the center where you're going to be. As I told you, Mohammed V Street, the Medina side, is what you see here on the left. And then this is how wide it becomes when you look at it. See how narrow it's here, and then the buildings on the left side, and then on this side it's wider. The transition part that I told you about, I just have one picture of my favorite building, which is actually became a bank now, but it still is my favorite building because it has all these a combination of what we call the Hispano-Moorish architecture. It's definitely no stone and concrete, but it still guards, it has limestone here, and all these balconies that are here actually, that are part of a Jewish Andalusian tradition that was actually brought when the Arabs came